In Immigrants Making an Impact, Javion Blake. We are glad you are here and we are excited to have a conversation with you. Please introduce yourself to us.
Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure being here, speaking to your audience. And my name is Javion Blake. I am the founder of Just Chill International. And at Just Chill International, what we do is we use breadfruit to make wonderful tasting gluten-free products. And some of those product lines include breadfruit pancake mixes, breadfruit muffin mixes, and our original product, which are breadfruit chips. Again, everything is gluten-free, grain-free, and we're looking to supply breadfruit, which is a staple in the global South, turn it into a product that is consumed readily on the mainstream markets, whether it's here in the US or other parts of the world that is not yet familiar with breadfruit.
Wonderful. We would like to know, talk to us about your background.
So first, I am originally from Jamaica. That's where I completed high school, up until high school, and actually started university there as well. And so I am from the western end of Jamaica. If anyone has ever been to Montego Bay, that's my hometown. And there's a lot of people who have been to Montego Bay, so I know a lot of people are familiar with my hometown. And I went to school in a school called Russie's High School. That's closer to Lucy, further on the western end. And so in university, I went to university here in the States. I moved there to go to school several years ago. I studied industrial engineering as a graduate student, and then I studied mechanical engineering. Before that, I studied mechanical engineering as an undergraduate, focused in aerospace.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. So obviously you are here because you're an immigrant. Take us through arriving in the US. So as a newcomer, how did you set out to pursue education? And did you come with your parents? How was it like in the beginning?
Now, for me, I came actually to the States by myself. Growing up, I've always watched a lot of those college movies in the States. And I don't know, at some point, I feel like it made me wanted to go to college in the US. I never really knew which college I wanted to go to in the US or which state or whatever. I just felt like I wanted to go to college in the US. And so I had spent a summer in New Jersey doing a summer internship a few years back. And I remember thinking to myself oh, this would be cool. I remember just meeting people from all over the world. And that was the first time I met someone from Russia, Taiwan, Kenya, Ghana, all these countries. And I just remembered, oh, that's just so cool. Being around, people from Colombia and people from Venezuela and Mexico. And that to me kind of gave me a drive to want to go to States school in the US, because I felt like that was something I get to interact with a lot more than I probably would have been doing in Jamaica. Even though in Jamaica, I grew up seeing a lot of tourists, mainly they're from America, Canada, England, some Japanese, and then we have Asian neighbors, and we have, Indian neighbors and Chinese and stuff like that. But it wasn't as broad as a scope as I was seeing when I was in the US. And so that really just motivated me to come into the US. And I remember my first day being in the US at the airport. I met Adele, and Selene. Adele was from Lebanon and Selene was from Turkey. And we were coming to go to the same school at Montana State. And I just remember to myself thinking wow, cool, I get to meet even more people from different parts of the world. And so it just kind of helped me to feel more at home when I was starting out and getting to learn more about what America is about, which came later. But I was just, like a kid in a candy store, basically, although I don't promote the use of sugar. But it's like a kid, really enjoying themselves to being exposed to so much things, to new things in the world, essentially.
Okay, wonderful. Up until now, it sounds like fun. But definitely, I believe that along the lines, there were some challenges. Let us pause and reflect. How has your immigrant journey been so far? So tell us about some of the ups and downs, some of your wins, and maybe setbacks, and some practical steps that you use to overcome this.
That's a good question. I think you're definitely. I think the journey has been, and I'm thinking probably will continue to be, a mixture of ups and downs, because you're coming from one place where, you're very familiar with the culture. Most of the people around you think similarly to the way you do. And then you're coming into a culture, and even though you're excited to be in it, there are just things that make you feel a little bit uncomfortable because it's just not the same way. You're now experiencing people who grew up under different circumstances, have different beliefs. I remember something I used to do as fun, where it's like I'd be walking and on the street, and on purpose, if I wanted to like run into someone, or like if I wanted to just like, you know, do the dance with someone basically on the sidewalk, um, I would just like go on the opposite direction from where they drive, because as in Jamaica, like people just walking on the side of the road. In America, people tend to like walk on the side they drive. Um, and so those are things you just kind of like see because you're like an outsider. Uh, those are the funnier parts. But then the other pieces where, like, you know, in Jamaica, you grow up in a community a lot of times, and there's a lot more of a community feel in terms of like, you know, your immediate surrounding. Where when you're in America, a lot of times it can be, you know, it's a lot more busy, so it can be a lot more individualistic, where people are, you know, focused on their here and now and taking care of what they need to take care of, and then you like there's not no one is really sitting down a lot of time and just like chit chatting for the sake of chit chatting. Whereas growing up in Jamaica, you know, your neighbor comes over to the patio and you sit there like just talking for like, you know, sometimes I see my grandma there talking for like hours. um, you know, and so there's that part of the culture where it's just different, and then other parts of it where it's like in America there's like a system for almost everything. Almost anything you want to do, there's a system. In Jamaica, you want to do anything, you're probably gonna have to build that thing from scratch, right? And so coming to the US and seeing that and not understanding that, sometimes as immigrants, I think it forces us to work extra than we need to do, because we just think we need to do everything by ourselves and build it from scratch. Whereas here, it's like if we spend time learning the system and how we can leverage that system to our benefits, we might be able to work more efficiently and, you know, create more value on the immediate front. And those are some of the things I think I've learned along the way, which has kind of helped me, where it's like I've learned now that I don't have to go out there and try to do everything by myself, but like really think about who else is doing something out there that is similar to what I'm doing. And is there an opportunity for collaboration? And if there is, what would that collaboration look like? And if there is, and if the picture comes up of what the collaboration look like, then what would it take from my end to be able to make that work? And am I willing to make that input? You know, because I think that's just something here that I've noticed in the US, where communication, you have to simplify your communications, whereas in Jamaica, your communication can be a little bit more complex because more people know what you're talking about because it's similar. But then you're in the US, or maybe even Europe, is probably similar. You got to simplify your communication, so you're reducing the likelihood of needing to make assumptions, because in most cases when people start making assumptions, what ends up happening, their assumption is based on a different framework than yours is. So I think a lot of those things has really helped me to navigate a lot of the spaces here and develop a lot of good relationships, and also be able to like leverage some of the system to help to make it work for me and me work for it, basically.
Wonderful. And I love that you share that learning the system in a new country is very important, that helps you to leverage the system to use it to your advantage. Wonderful. So I know that you're an entrepreneur, and how did you land here? Because you went to school, you studied engineering, and did you know in the initial stages that you wanted to be an entrepreneur and work for yourself and the industry that you are in?
Sure. So at Just International, what we do, kind of what I briefly touched on earlier, was so I don't know if you're familiar with breadfruit.
Yes, I do.
Oh, you are? Okay. So breadfruit is known across the world, right? Especially the tropical belts. But a lot of outside of the tropical belt does not know what breadfruit is. It's mostly known by diaspora or people in those regions. But breadfruit has so much significant benefit. It's like it's considered superfood. You know, it's gluten-free, it's grain-free. It has a really good consistency. The taste profile is, you know, pretty fitting into like what the American consumer really likes. But it's just not something that's known in these parts of the world because it's never really been commercialized. And a part of that commercialization, lack of commercialization, I would say, is due to the fact that it has a limited shelf life. And so I grew up in Jamaica and I saw like a lot of waste. And I've always had question in my head, like, if this breadfruit is going to waste, and I know people love it so much, because I'm from a tourist capital, right? So I know when tourists come there, they love the product. So like, how can you take this product that they love and give them a piece of it when they get back home. So that was a question for me really, really early on before I even figured I would like get into this space at all. And a few years ago, back in like 2019, I was doing some research for an event I was doing for foods, and the thought just came to mind. It's like, what if I slice breadfruit really thin? Like, what would happen, you know? And from that question, I kind of get some samples made, and then I started going around and giving it out to folks, and people were like, "Oh my God, this thing is great." So that's kind of when the idea started taking shape, and then like, okay, breadfruit chips is a way could take this to folks in the US because they love chips. Gluten-free is a thing now, grain-free is a thing, superfood is a thing, and all these different thing about it is really like helping to propel as the time has now come to make it a product be available. So that's one side. The second side of the question is like, yes, even though I came to America studying engineering, to a large extent, I've always wanted to be an international trading entrepreneur and also somehow a consultant around whether energy development or stuff of that nature, waste reduction, basically economic empowerment. That has always been like a passion of mine that I've always wanted to drive my career towards. But I studied engineering, to be honest, because it was one of the best paying like fields out there that gives you job security. And so it's just like, and plus I love design. I love to like take things. I love finding undervalued things and turn it into something that works and become something more valuable to society. And so engineering really gave me a very good basic framework on how to do that. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of business focused around engineering. So we're never really taught as much around how to take these great ideas and to turn them into sustainable business, which is something I kind of had to learn later on. But I've always been in entrepreneurship. When I was younger in Jamaica, I started one of the first like phone businesses in Jamaica, selling when mobile phones was just becoming a thing in Jamaica. We were like at some of the cutting edge, like getting, new cell phones out, camera phones and smartphones and whatnot out into consumers' hands by leveraging e-commerce. And I had to sort out when I came to the US because I didn't have the visa to continue doing that. So, but entrepreneurship has always been a part of what I do. And it's still a big part of like why I do what I do, because I love bringing value to the market segment and finding creative ways to do that. I don't know if I'm the best business person, but I love business and I love creating something new and taking it and fitting it into a market that can really create value for that market.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing about your entrepreneurial journey. I think that there are so many immigrants who want to pursue entrepreneurship. So what would be your advice if somebody is starting off as an entrepreneur? What would be some of your tips for them to succeed or to do it in a valuable way? Very
good question. If you ask me, I think every immigrant should be an entrepreneur. And here's why I say that. And I'm not saying that you should not work for anybody. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying, I think you should always be an entrepreneur, because why? Every immigrant shows up somewhere with something different and potentially valuable to that society, right? Entrepreneurship is like that for you to impact the society in a positive way with your creative insight, because you have a different viewpoint than majority of the people around you. You have different experiences from the people around you, right? So you exposing people to your idea, obviously you're going to have to pivot at times, and you're going to have to, make adjustments here and there. And, you might have to make some sacrifices here and there about whatever you thought the idea was going to be and how you actually get to present it. But that's what value is, right? Value, at least in the TPS system, the type of production system, value is what someone's willing to pay for, right? And so if someone's willing to pay for something and you're thinking like, no, they should know. It's like saying, oh, they should have this food very spicy. And your market is saying, oh my God, we love this food, but if you just take some of the spice out, we would love to get this food. And you're like, well, no, but this is how I make it as a child. I think as an entrepreneur, that those kind of things really work against you. You have to be mission driven, but you also have to be flexible enough to listen and humble enough to listen to the market feedback. In terms of starting, I would say, so number one, I think every immigrant should be an entrepreneur to some extent. Number two, I think you definitely need to listen to your market and not just like evangelically forcing stuff down throats, but instead offer solutions and kind of get feedback from that and be humble enough to listen to those feedbacks.
Mm.
Number three, I would say, is a lot of times as entrepreneurs, as optimistic people like we are, and creatives as we are, and all these kind of things, we like thinking about things really big. We like big ideas, and we want to impact the world in big ways. But I challenge my entrepreneur colleagues sometimes to think really, really small. Have the big picture, the impact you want to make in the world, but think really, really small to what does it take to get yourself started. And then develop a metric in some way, shape, or form as to what will it take to continue. Because whether you like it or not, it's just the reality. You're going to run into things where any sensible person, based on logic, is going to want to stop.
I know. I can relate.
Yeah. It is just a part of that journey, but it's the part of the journey that selects the winners from the losers, basically, right? And that's why you have to come up with your own metrics, not just necessarily society's metrics, or not just necessarily the venture capitalist metrics or whatever, but your metrics that's going to keep you motivated. Because some of the metrics is not going to be like the balance sheet, right? Because when you're starting off small projects, your balance sheet is not even relevant in most cases. Your balance sheet, your income statement, your cash flow statement, most of those are not even relevant in that stage. You're basically just finding everything from anywhere you can to put into it to really keep it going. And so understand that when you think really small, target really that niche that you can really supply that to, get the feedback you need. Then when you can start doing that, you can start having a scale strategy, right? Then when you have a scale strategy, at that point, you're in a better position now to go seek external funding, to say, hey, I have this thing, it's working in this small way. What I need now is some turnkey, whether it's financial resources or access or whatever it is, to kind of get me to that next level. But I think sometimes a lot of us entrepreneurs, we're really trying to solve everybody's problem every time, too fast, basically. And then it becomes overwhelming. And because we're so stretched out in so many different places, we don't feel like we're having any impact. But business requires persistency. Patience and persistency is probably one of your biggest supporters in entrepreneurship.
That is wonderful, amazing. And I think that the nuggets that you have shared today is going to go a long way to help many immigrant entrepreneurs. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So talk about the difference you are making with your company.
Yeah, so I think it's in several different ways. One, I think we're taking a product that largely would have gone to waste, right? And we're taking that product and we're saying, hey, this is a product that would largely go to waste. This is a product that you have at your fingertip. This is a resource you have at your fingertip that you don't even understand the value of. And in some cases, some people would like to, let's say, consider breadfruit to be like poor people's food, in certain cultural dynamic, and you're taking that and you're going no, we're taking that product to the mainstream market, and not just any part of the mainstream market, but to the mainstream market with slightly higher disposable income, which focuses on healthier eating, natural products, gluten-free aspects, grain-free and all that kind of stuff. And we're taking that product and packaging it into something that the market is looking at and saying, wow, this is a grade A product you got here. We take this thing to New York, the feedback is wonderful. We take it to California, the feedback is wonderful. Atlanta, Chicago, the feedback is always wow, where is this thing? What is this thing? So we're out there in some of the forefronts of the food space, taking this product, introducing it to people who have never heard about it. And people on the ground now are starting to see, wow, there's value in this thing. So wonder what else around us could potentially be valuable that we're overlooking. So that's just one of the impact I think that we're helping to have. I think on the flip side, there's a segment of the market that's going wait, we've been told that corn, rice, wheat, and all these different things are really the only sustainable option or the only options available for our, nutrient intake, to the point where you go to the store and you look at 500 different products, and each of them have the same ingredients. They're just packaged differently or, structured differently. But it's the same, like whether it's cereal, whether it's pancakes, like it's basically wheat, right? And so we're flipping that dynamic in the head and be like, what else are you not thinking about when you're thinking of food sources? Because if now there's a thing called breadfruit, which you like, which has nutritional value, what else could potentially be out there that you're not yet consuming, that you could be consuming, that gives you a better balanced diet? So from that sense, we are introducing people now to new concept, to new culture, because when you bring the food comes with its culture. So it helps people to connect on a stronger basis, because nothing connects people like food. Everybody eats.
I do agree. Yes.
And yeah. And so it just gives that overarching like framework to help people to like now dig further into the next culture. And you know what's important about that? As a globally minded person myself, and as an active member of a global minded community, it creates what are the similarities that exist between our different cultures, and why is it that we need to work together to make this planet a better place? So I think there's several aspects in which we're impacting on the ground. I mean, and so there are other parts like financial, where we try to purchase our products from these farmers and help these communities to hopefully build a sustainable supply chain around these products. Economies thinking of other ways to scale outside of traditional ways. How can import be improved? And a lot of our developing countries have significant balance against their import-export bills. So like, can some of the things, like for example, some of the things we do in Jamaica, like can some of these products be produced in-house in country with locally sourced produce or raw materials, instead of having a significant import bill that suppresses the ability of the local economy to actually produce things, because it just can't produce at the rate that these larger countries are producing at, with subsidized farming and whatnot. So I think in both ways, it's really helping both markets to better understand opportunities to connect, bring value in both segments, and really just helping us to become a more global world.
Javion, you are a genius. And thank you for the work that you do. Thank you for the difference and the impact that you are making, because I think that your product is really sustainable. And that is something that we need in this generation, in this world that we live in. So thank you.
Well, first of all, thank you very much for calling me a genius. I'm not sure if I am, but I really appreciate you you sharing your kind words. But yeah, I think exactly what you're doing as well, is building that community. So I think what people like you do, we can't underestimate as well, because building a community across the globe that helps us to really deliver a sustainable solution to the world we live in today, and the ones we're going to leave for our kids and our future kids tomorrow, is very, very essential. And like, for example, I'm going to be in Berlin, and with me and a group of young leaders here in Atlanta are going to be in Berlin in October, right? And it's to still deliver that same message, that it doesn't matter where in the world we are, as a global community, we have to work together to make this a more sustainable planet and deliver solutions that is not just going based on analogy of how things were done in the past, but really digging into first principle as to see how we can create the world we seek in the future, starting today.
Wow. Thank you. So I have a question for you, Javion. What would you do if you knew you wouldn't fail?
Interestingly, that's a great question, because to be honest, I would do basically the same thing I'm doing now. I would just do it just more boldly. Yeah, I would do it probably more boldly. Yeah. If you give me $1 million now, I would just use that $1 million to go faster.
Woohoo! Wonderful. And yes, so go ahead and do it boldly, because you are on the right course. Okay.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I appreciate your feedback. And I love the energy of this interview, I feel like we're just talking to each other and we're just like exchanging ideas, and I love this. I love the energy. So I definitely look forward to staying connected, and as we both grow in our different spaces.
Yes, we will do that. Yes. So what is the most important thing that you would do today to make tomorrow better?
Great question. For me, I think you can think in several ways. I think the world has become so used to information
Mm-hmm.
that we don't realize how much information is really out there, because there's just so much information out there. And every day you're being bombarded with like 500 different things, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so if there's a way to curate information that would benefit the lives of people across the world, I think that would be a massive, massive step forward, because there's a lot of solutions that's out there. We just don't know it yet, because it's overcome by so much more other information that might not be as useful. Another thing that I do is like delivering healthcare. So I work with Project Cure to like ship medical containers to Jamaica to help to bolster the healthcare out there, and set up hospitals or helping to do hospitals and stuff like that to deliver healthcare to local communities, because a lot of communities in our developing world don't necessarily have the right access to healthcare.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of the care they get is more like sick care versus healthcare. Because I think healthcare needs to encompass like, how are you eating? What's your lifestyle like? Really getting people that information that's going to make them live a very healthy and thriving life.
Mm-hmm.
And then really working along the same line is working to educate that new population with skills that are going to help them to really have an impact in today's society, and not just have them in a classroom, prepare them the same way that we've been prepared several years back, to come work in like a factory setting, when the world has really changed and it really requires a lot more creativity and just like, the ability to form communities and to like communicate and all these different things. So I think if we can really bolster up healthcare, deliver information around like living a sustainable life and really living a fulfilled life, and really thinking deeper than just the basic idea of what success look like, I think we can really empower our generation, the upcoming generation, generations to come, in how to live in a world where it's a win-win-win solutions that are really considered to be successes, and not the win-loss approach that we have come to accept in the world we live in today.
That's so sweet. I will entreat my listeners, if anybody out there is listening and is connecting with what Javion is saying, you want to maybe start doing something around the lines of what Javion is talking about, please connect with him. And then, as Javion said, let's start small and do the things that we need to do so that we can make tomorrow better.
I agree. Large other people connect across the world, connect with me on LinkedIn. That's probably one of more out there pages, but a lot of social medias as well. And sometimes I might not respond right away, but I promise I'm just getting through stuff and getting stuff done. But yeah, I'm happy to connect and really, do some wonderful work across the globe to really make this a better place to live. And as you say, following my own tennis, I try to start small. And we're doing stuff in Jamaica right now. We're doing stuff here in the US right now. I mean, we have impact in different places. Like we got some trees that are going to be planted in Haiti coming up here soon. For trees that feed, and trees that feed plant trees all over the world. They just plant some in Uganda, Tanzania, Nigeria.
Wow.
So, things like that, we try to like use our platform as best as possible to kind of like amplify those voices, because those are the voices that are really impacting the world, and we are just able to form a community with those voices and make a difference. So connect with me, reach out, and if I have opportunity to connect and really sit down one-on-one, that would be great. I look forward to connecting with you all and talking to you all and sharing and watching us grow together in this space and beyond.
Cool. Javion, what advice would you give to immigrants? You've already said that every immigrant should be an entrepreneur. What else would you tell us?
I would say one of the number one thing I would say to every immigrant, the word I would use is humility. And the reason for that is, keep in mind that when you come into a new place, you're bringing your version of how you view the world. But also keep in mind that the place you're coming into, in many cases, they have their version of how they view the world. And the best way to bridge that gap is through consensus. But we have to have the patience and the humility to hear different voices, and then from there, try to find the common ground on which we can all stand together.
Wonderful. So it's time to invite our community to support you. Are there any projects that you are doing that you want us to know about?
Yeah, so we continue with the breadfruit project right now, just shield breadfruit products and getting those out into the markets. Otherwise, from that, we have a medical container, another medical container going to Jamaica here in September. And from that, we're in the very early stages now of getting into the renewable energy space. We're going to be doing some work in that. Next year, we should be having some medical professionals, specialists from the US going to Jamaica to deliver some healthcare to the local people in the communities. So we should have like several medical specialists actually who are very tenured in the medical field to help to deliver some healthcare to the local population. Outside of that, and then the renewable energy space we're in groundwork of really entering that space. And so we're looking for partners or people who want to be in that energy, renewable energy space in the Caribbean. And go from there.
That is great. I believe that our listeners are glad to connect with you and then give you the support that you need. All right. So, Javion, what will be your last words as we wrap up?
Well, first, I would like to take the opportunity to really thank you for building this platform and really helping to, bring together the voices of immigrants, not just in one location, but across the world. I think that's a wonderful concept, and I look forward to seeing you grow your platform. And honored to be one of your guests on here. And second point I'd like to add is to, I think that sometimes we hear the stories about immigrants and we think of like, all the bad sides of what immigration brings and all the bad things that immigrants bring to different places, because sometimes it's just what gets highlighted and what gets, media attention. But I strongly believe that we should really, as immigrants, we should really consider ourselves to be, some of the drivers or some of the builders in many societies that we step into, and to have that in the back of our heads and advance confidently into, the spaces that we step into. Do so humbly, not necessarily, too aggressive about it, but be so, keep that confidence within you in knowing that even if you step into a new system and at some point have to like advance from the lower ladder all the way up, just know that you are creating value in the world and you are bringing something new and unique to where you find yourself in that society. So remain confident, advance with that same frame of mind, and continue to be a light to the world in the best way we know how, because that's how the narrative will change over time.
Wonderful. Finally, please complete this sentence for us. Immigrants are
wonderful. Like, I can't think of a better word to put to it. And it's like, immigrants are a wonderful part of this world. Like, yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.